recording. All right, well, I think we'll get started. I mean, this may end up being a relatively short meeting. It's a hectic month for me, and I didn't get quite as much done on the draft as I'd hoped to. In any case, I'll call to order the Welcoming Ordinance Task Force. And tonight we'll talk a little logistics, and then I did work on a draft, made a little bit of progress, so we can talk about that and see if folks have feedback about it. We're not voting on anything tonight. I think that, we're slow and steady will win this race. So I'm going to ask that folks not use the chat. I can take a minute and go disable it, but if you don't mind, just because it having a separate discussion as part of the chat, I think is a distraction more than anything. And then we will talk about next steps. So, and we'll have public participation. I know there's a crowd here who wants to participate. So we'll do that first. One logistical item, I was hoping we'd have minutes to vote on tonight, but the City Council Administrative Assistant stepped down and we're in the process of hiring a new one. So we're way understaffed, and the office wasn't too thrilled about doing it anyway. So, but I don't think it's going to happen now. So would anybody like to volunteer to 2 minutes for us? Otherwise, I'm going to take on that responsibility. They're going to be brief. They're not going to be, Miss Kelly level minutes like we have for the City Council. We don't, the requirements aren't that we have to be that detailed. So, okay.
There's a live transcript, right? So it's just taking it from that. It's not taking minutes during the meeting. It's taking it from the recording, right?
Yeah. I think the live transcript was only on, and that's my fault starting with this meeting. And that's just because Natasha reminded me to do that. It's not going to be blow by blow. It's going to be like, and there was a discussion about the first section, and I think it may be 2 paragraphs long. I think it can be very short. And there's examples out there of minutes that are written that way. Really the things that are essential in minutes are things like officially recorded votes. That's the number one thing. And, who's in attendance, things like that.
I can try and do the last one if you want to send me the recording of it.
I will do that. I'll send you the link. It's up on the public meeting portal, I think, because somebody requested it. Okay, well, I really appreciate that. If anybody else wants to take on a week, let me know. Otherwise, I'm happy to crank through them. Only the ones that we've done. There's like the previous incarnation of this committee. I don't know if they recorded those, but I don't really, I don't know that there's many people who are still around who were in those meetings who would have a memory of that. So. All right, public participation, unless there's other logistical items. All right, who is interested in publicly participating? See, we have Mr. Rizzoli and any of the other Crispy Bacon, very creative username there. I'm sorry if that's your actual name. Actually, I went to graduate school with a Chris Bacon, so maybe it's him. I don't know if his middle name started with P. All right, so it doesn't look like they're just here to view, which is fine. All right, Mr. Rizzoli, I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and I've got my little stopwatch ready so that I don't get accused of shorting you anytime. I got to ask you to unmute here. All right, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Can I at least read this?
You can do whatever you want in 2 minutes.
I know, but can I have the minutes to read this? I don't think your 2 minutes is enough when you have your people talking for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. I think the public should be able to read what they have. Can I read this and read it?
You have 1:35 left.
Okay.
So
you are something else. Let me tell you something. Okay, whatever. My questions are here in my limited time. Why do we have to have a freedom, nice smirk on your face? Why do we have to have a Freedom of Information Act to get the videos? Why do I need to take a Freedom of Information Act to take a meeting that's recorded for the public? I'm asking you a question.
You've got a minute left.
Okay. Now, why can't this meeting be done through Ron Rago's department? You're not going to answer my questions? Are you serious?
When you're done, I'll answer the ones that I want to.
This is a Framingham Task Force public meeting, and you're not going to answer my questions? How dare you? How dare you? Look at the smirk of your face. According to federal law, you people are breaking the law by having this meeting, by providing a situation where you give illegal aliens anything. It's against federal law, against the statutes of the aiding and abetting statutes. And I would suggest your legal department look into this. You are violating federal law. And the three members that are on the council.
Thank you. Your time is up. All right. Regarding the video, it's a big file on my computer, and I don't know. I send it to whoever wants it right away. So I think I sent it to Kaz, and then as soon as they get it posted. Why the department doesn't do these meetings? I would be happy to let somebody else run the Zoom, but I think they appreciate me doing it. All right. No other public participation, so we're going to keep going. And so I sent around
Adam, Diana Ploss has her hand up.
Okay, thank you. Before we hear from Diana, because I don't want this to be a running string, is there anybody else who wants to participate other than that? Otherwise, Diana is going to be our last. Okay. Diana, you can have 2 minutes.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I just want to say that Diana Ploss is doing this live stream, and I'm Jim Rizzoli, and I would like to speak in that place because I'm working through her live stream. And I just want to say that the way you handle my brother Joe was really disgusting. It's hard to believe that you can even have a meeting like this, and then you have a nice little smirk on your face knowing what you're doing. I mean, that's really disgusting. Your whole group here should be disbanded, and the police that's on this group should be ashamed of himself because he's in with a group of people that are completely communist, okay? And he's in it with a group that are trying to aid and abet illegal immigration. He should be disgusted with himself to be on this group with you people that are pure blue communist or red communist, I would say. You're all disgusting. And all of you here, I don't even know how you can look at yourself in the mirror when you cut off Americans that have been living in this town for all their lives, and you don't allow them any opportunity to have anything to say. You're a disgusting group of people. You should be ashamed of yourself, and you should be really run out of town, really. That's what should happen to you. I'm disgusted to see that you can even be here. All of you. And Miss Souza there, you think you're such a smart ass. Look at you with the little smirk.
All right. Thank you for your comments, but we're not going to allow direct attacks on people. And you've really, the whole thing was a direct attack. So that's all we need of that. Yeah. All right, let's move on. So I sent a draft out, and so I took the work that folks in this subcommittee had done and were in separate documents and tried to incorporate them in. And one of the things I thought that might be helpful, because I think we had 6 themes, was to try and find some common ground between them and to combine them in some cases. And so I'll be curious about your thoughts on that. And then I started to work through the section on safe communities, which deals a lot with police policy, but I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done there. So my thinking is that between now and the next meeting, it'll be helpful to send whatever we have at the end of this meeting to the chief, and to the deputy chief to get specific feedback about concerns they have or things they'd like to see added. Same thing with the superintendent of schools, and also with the mayor. We haven't. The mayor hasn't had a chance to provide feedback since that first meeting, so but we can talk more about that. But why don't we? Does everybody have access to the draft? Does anybody need the link? All right. So I'm going to bring it up here myself. So why don't we sort of go section by section? So the first section, purpose. So we talked about doing like whereas statements, but I think that we could go either way with that. But I think having a purpose maybe instead or in addition to would be good. But so I don't know if this language was in the last draft or if somebody had provided this, but why don't you take a minute and look that over, and if you have any thoughts on the purpose and whether that works for you or changes you'd like to see.
Why are the police on this board? Why are there police on this board? That's a conflict.
All right, thank you. This is a task force. We are not obligated to provide any public participation, so I'll ask people to be respectful. So thank you. All right. So if folks want to look over the language in that first section, I don't know if anybody has any comments, suggestions.
I think it looks good. I don't have any suggestions, so sorry.
No, that's fine. And you may have, there may be little tweaks and edits that we can work through offline, but all right, I'm going to try and not get distracted here. So just turn off the. Yes, go ahead, Jennifer. Do I need to? Oops, sorry. I think I did that.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Adam. Just the last sentence, providing a framework for respectful relationships between city employees and all residents. I guess I'm just wondering, and I generally don't have any issue with this statement either, but do we want to include some more descriptive words other than respectful relationships? I'm just thinking about productive or, I think we're looking to be more than just cordial, right? Between the city and the community, right? Do we want to be more ambitious, I guess, in the sentiment? I'm without having a thesaurus in front of me, but that's just maybe something with a little more oomph.
Yeah.
But for future discussions or.
That makes sense, because you're right. It should be more proactive, and we're trying to, we're trying to not only just keep the peace, so to speak. We're trying to make sure that our city government is serving everyone and empowering people.
You are allowing a purposeful invasion.
All right, let's. All right, so that's good. Let me just take note of that. And I can work on, I like the word productive, but I can work on some other language that makes this more active and proactive and positive and not just. Okay, Any other thoughts on that purpose section? Okay. Definitions were just, boilerplate from the last one. So the next section, is the meat of it, the order. And so there's a little preamble sentence there that I thought maybe it'd be nice to have one sentence that sort of summarized things. And then the first section, which combined two topics, which, I tried to pick ones that seemed to go together for me, but I definitely am open to whether that does or does not make sense. But if folks want to look through, that first preamble, and then number 1, civic engagement and equitable access. And then there are 4 letters beneath that took elements of both of them.
I struggled with B a little bit. I think I would love to use the phrase maybe residents instead of non-citizen.
Yeah.
We sort of talked a little bit about using citizens at the last meeting. So it struck me there, and I had thought maybe to go through the full document, but I didn't, like, with that eye to things.
Yeah, I definitely think, unless we're talking about not allowing citizenship to impact things, I think the word citizen should be avoided as like a definition of the people we're serving or who this is about. So and we talked about that. I think I removed it in some places, but definitely missed that one.
You could always do something like residents, regardless of immigration status, should be encouraged to serve, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, I'd like to echo that statement.
Yeah, that's a
It's
great
inclusive.
one. Definitely. And I think there's work to be done there to let folks know that you do not have to be a citizen. You don't, these boards and committees are well served by diversity, and we have too little of it, I think, for a lot of different reasons, but one of them is some people may think they're not eligible or welcome. And I also think it's really good to emphasize non-voting ways of participation. I think we sometimes fixate as elected officials on the vote, and your vote is your voice, and without voting you don't have a say. And I don't think that's not something I personally believe in. I think there's many ways. Voting is important, but there are many other ways to be active and involved, and some folks don't vote, choose not to vote, and are active and involved, and so, or they're not eligible to vote. One thing that I was looking at, we talked about communication and translation a lot in the last meeting. And, I think I had some language in there, like that should be translated into like the 2 most popular, languages, which doesn't seem right. And one thing I think that we should push the city toward doing, is finding an electronic format, especially because the current formats we have are so hard to use anyway. But I know the school department in Framingham uses s'more, which we also use in Maynard. And I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, s'more, it seems kind of clunky, but it's actually a great way to send out newsletters because it has translation built into it. And so the reader can go up and pick one of 100 different languages, and then it instantly translates it versus, an email or a Word doc, or even a web page. Folks can have their own translation, but having a platform that does it automatically, I think, is where we should be at in this day and age. Yes. Deputy,
I
Chief.
take this OR on subsection C now, city communication. That is what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, to me, that paragraph, the way, I like what you're suggesting. What's written here now, it puts a huge burden on the city. This is very, very broad. The city department shall provide translated materials and communications. Materials and communications, that is, that's everything.
Yeah.
When requested in all written communication. So when requested, that's basically everything that we produce would have to be translated into any language. That is putting a huge, huge burden on the city. So yeah, if we could do something like what you're talking about, because I just don't see how feasible that is.
That's fair. It's like the first sentence is what I'm talking about, and then the second sentence is talking about what you're referring to, which.
Adam, do we respectfully, do we have any demographic, do we have any data on languages spoken in Framingham, like non-English, like how predominant certain languages are? And perhaps we could commit to, the first top 3 for the city.
Yeah.
And whenever possible, right, other languages.
Well, I'm sure this, I see Masusa unmuted. I'm sure the school department has some of that, or has that data,
I can tell you about the school department. Mr. Steiner is correct. 7 more languages spoken in our schools.
How many?
74.
74, wow.
We're very proud of that.
But are there as Ms. Allington was saying, are there I think Portuguese, I imagine, is right at the top, and Spanish, and then maybe, I don't know, you tell me, are there other ones that are?
So I'm happy to come to our next meeting, kind of armed with that information. The information that I have at the top of my head is just English language learners.
Yeah.
Which may English language learners and people who speak different languages. It's not exactly a clear cut and paste of what the rest of the community is speaking, but I'm happy to kind of to come equip that information next time. Okay,
thank you. I think that we can all think about how do we handle this question. I think documents that can be digital should be, and in a format that could be translated automatically, like a s'more-like system. But communication, could be phone calls and city council meetings. And if somebody says, I need the city council meeting to be translated into, this one language that's relatively obscure every time, that's one example of something that might be not possible for the city to manage. So I think there's the written digital stuff, I think, is easy. When you get to live things like this, it's more complicated. Although Google Meet now has built-in live translations, which is unbelievable to me. The other thing the school department has, because we use Aspen and Maynard, is you can record the preferred language of the family in Aspen, which is the student information system, and then it will automatically translate things like report cards into the preferred language. So. All right, so maybe let's all, Ms. Souza, if you could help us with a little bit of that data. And I also would like to send the school section to the superintendent as well to start getting his feedback on that. But if we can all dig into that question and, you know, what is reasonable versus fair on translations. Section D was interesting. I think maybe Councilor Stuart Morales had talked about this physical location, which I think is there like a place where new arrivals to Framingham can go? I know if the school department has sort of like a welcoming center, but is there a city version of that? Does anybody know? No. Sounds like a no. So so I think that's something that, you know, is worth doing. Because I know that there's a lot of resources in Framingham, but it's really hard to know about them, even as somebody who is involved in government and been here a long time. There's things, you know, like I didn't know the Boys and Girls Club was available, you know, until a couple of years ago, and you know what that was all about and how amazing that is. So
I know that before the pandemic, just before the pandemic, that there was an effort by private foundations to fund some sort of central location in partnership, I think, with the school. And perhaps that may be something to include the city in at some point as well. Because I think there's already been work done on trying to identify what a central location would look like and what services it would provide and how to you know, deliver those services.
I do have a suggestion as well. I mean, while we're talking about like existing efforts and everything, people are not coming from the same place culturally. Their approaches of how do we get help is very, very different. As it's one of the greater things about having such a diverse community is that the way they receive help, the way they ask for help is very different as well, which makes for a really exciting challenge here in Framingham. But there are systems in place and organizations in place. So maybe instead of building something from the ground up, increasing access to information, maybe have like a central document of like, these are the organizations that help out, or you know, something in the language that establishes greater relationship with the municipal government and these organizations, so that we can have a two-way kind of funnel situation. So just something to think about, you know, instead of reinventing the wheel, using the systems that are already in place.
absolutely, great point. We have so many great community organizations in Framingham, and when the city works together with them, you know, I think that's some of the best things that happen in Framingham. So.
I think just building on that, I wonder, I don't know enough about the public school welcome center, but I imagine it does include a lot of that access to resources. If we can't build on that or connect to that, I mean, obviously it's also very school specific, but well, I don't know, I haven't seen it. So.
Councilor Clark, this is your official invitation. Come to go visit. Yeah, I will reach out to you offline. We'd love to have you come visit.
Where is it these days? At the
Farley
building? At the Farley. Okay.
Yeah. You are also invited, Councilor Steiner.
Thank you. I think probably, you know, it seems like the school system in a lot of ways is light years ahead of the city in terms of I mean, with good reason, because children are need special care and attention. But in terms of providing information and welcoming and connecting with families and, providing food to the hungry, I think about Daniel's Table coming into schools, like folks who don't have school children are connected to our schools. I think it's probably extra effort needs to go to reach out to them. Well, since we're talking about schools some, why don't we, I think we, let's hold off on the safe communities section, because I think, I think it needs more work, and I want to just get some, we already got some direct feedback. I think Ms. Allington had gathered some of that, but I want to get more before we even dig into that. So the section beneath that.
Can I just make
Yes.
one comment on 2A, if we could switch that to the city of Framingham?
Uh-oh. I got to put $1 in the jar. Okay, I'll know. We may be changing a lot more than that, but I will make sure that is noted. Oh boy.
I think it's those first two paragraphs there, I think A and maybe B, but are taken directly from the police department's immigration document that they had shared with us at the last meeting, I think. So I wonder, which I think had said that it was last reviewed in 2018, maybe. I don't know if there's a more updated copy than that one, but that's my guess.
That makes sense. Yeah, I as I started to look at this, I think the police department has some really solid policies that are very good, as was in our background materials. And but policies can change more easily than an ordinance. So that's why I think codifying the parts of that we think are really important, I think is good. And so, yeah, I may have done a cut and paste job. And so maybe I can pass a little blame for that town of Framingham thing onto the police department policy. All right, but let's hold off on digging into that whole section till the next meeting. And if we go down to, oh, that's confusing. If you go down to 3, it's that safe community section is very long and it's confusing at the end. But 3 is Framingham Public Schools, and and Ms. Sousa wrote all of this, I believe, or most of it. So I want to make sure she gets credit for that. But if you want to go through 3A, B, C, D, and E.
Oh, me?
No, anybody, if they have feedback on it. I mean, I liked it, which is why I kind of put it all in here. And I worked on some of education the first time around, and but this covers a whole lot of ground that I think is important, so that we didn't.
And just to kind of to give a little background on how this list came to be, a lot of this is tied into the strategic goals of the school committee, especially under the diversity, equity, and inclusion subcommittee. So we tied, and that in itself is also done in collaboration and tied to the superintendent's strategic goals. So we try to keep everything pretty, not homogenous, but cohesive.
Consistent, yeah.
That's the word.
I have just on D, I wonder if those last two sentences could be made together into one. I don't feel comfortable necessarily saying that they must collaborate. I feel more comfortable with maintain partnerships as language. It just, to me, feels more comfortable. So I don't know if that could just be sort of put together.
Yeah, I mean, I think something like district employees will maintain partnerships with community leaders. Communities in there twice, so I'll have to work on that. But in the immigrant community, including religious leaders, Brace, super parents, Pelham, and others, or
perhaps
something like that.
FPS will identify, develop, and maintain partnerships. So again, we're not just maintaining existing relationships, but looking for new ones. I
like that. You can tell I mainly do technical writing. It's like everything's very Ernest Hemingway, very short sentences. So that's better. I'm just reading the staff and human resources section, and the language in there is so strong, and I think some of that needs to get into the city employment section, which is in number 4. 4 is, I don't know if it's somewhere else in here, but 4 is just like, you can't discriminate, which I think is probably the law. You know, the schools one is like, let's, actively recruit and retain and make a special effort to do that. And I definitely think the city should be doing the same thing. So. All right. Well, if folks want to look into number 4, economic resources. And then the rest of it, there's a complaints section that came from somewhere. I don't know. I can run that by human resources in the police department. About you.
For 4A, I think that falls under the conversation we had earlier about, sort of what are we asking our city to do, how specific, how arduous might it be?
All right, sorry about that.
No, so how arduous might it be? Is it realistic? And I think from a business development standpoint and economic development, maybe it should be different, or does it really need to be different? I don't know. But that's, I guess, something I'm thinking about.
You're talking about the translation part of it?
Yeah.
Because I can see that, yeah, that language is still in there about the three most commonly, which would be English, Spanish, Portuguese. It seems like we should do that, like that material is coming out of our planning department about like starting a business or applying for grants or whatever should be in those three languages, at least to me.
Yeah, I think my question is, does that need to be a separate bullet point than our paragraph above about city communication generally? And maybe it does. Maybe we're saying this is more of a priority. But I wonder then if it shouldn't be together, just in the format and the flow.
Yeah, I hear you. No, I'm hearing the thunder. I think that's why the dog is running away. All right. Goodbye. Got a smirk.
The comedic timing is to be commended, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to encourage sound effects, you know, like I definitely had that issue when I was a teacher, you know, where a kid said something funny. I'm going to give him credit for it, but it tends to encourage copycats. So. This good old task force. All right. Any other general thoughts, comments?
Just a general thought on that, and that city employment paragraph.
Yes.
I mean, I guess I don't have strong feelings, but do we need to put something like that in this? It seems very in the weeds, right? About if you're applying for a job. I mean, because we have sort of set the tone earlier, right? That the city is not going to discriminate, which is consistent with the law, right? But I mean, this is getting into employment verification, which I don't know. I mean, I get we're setting a tone, right? But it seems very technical to me.
It is technical, yeah, that is a good point.
I'd say,
yes, go ahead.
That this, you know, I'm not, you know, I've been away for the past 2 months, so I'm just kind of jumping on board now, and so I'm not really sure if, you know, this is like in the early works in terms of this ordinance, but I think the whole proposed ordinance or draft is really getting into the weeds. You know, I was doing some searching online today just in preparation for this meeting, and the Northampton has an ordinance that's, I don't know if anyone's had an update to look at that ordinance, but maybe before the next meeting, if you'd like to do that. It's really just kind of brief and doesn't get into the weeds, and it really almost leaves it up to, you know, the administrations to come up with policies to, you know, to promulgate the spirit of the ordinance, if you will. You know, I would be more in favor of something along those lines.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's a balance. I don't think we looked at Northampton. We did look at some other cities' ordinances, Somerville, Salem, and then I think the ACLU provided a template that may have made some of its way in there. I think there's a balance to be found where I think that some parts, like the section we were just talking about, maybe too technical, in some cases just repeating federal law, but at the same time, we want to create something that lives beyond policy. Like, we want to codify what's really essential to us that may be policy now, but we don't, we want to make sure that we're ensuring that these things are in place regardless of whether somebody with a different perspective on these issues comes along. And so I think in some cases, I don't want to leave it up to the discretion of department heads to necessarily do all of this. So, so I think, to me, there's a balance that has to be reached, but we don't want to go too far where folks are going to either ignore it or be very, offended or feel like there's no way that they can actually do it. That's my personal opinion, but. But I think I will find Northampton's and add it. There's in the folder, under the background materials, there's a welcoming ordinance committee folder, and in that there's a sample ordinances folder. So I can add it in there and we can take a look at that. And if there's specific sections that folks feel are problematic, we can discuss narrowing it a little more. And definitely the safe communities one, I'm gonna do some work on with the police department to figure out what's essential. But I do think it's very important. Again, even though a lot of the safe communities is coming directly from police department policy, we want to make sure the policies that we feel are essential to our character as a city are codified in the laws of the city so that they're not subject to policy changes the way other things could be.
Yeah, I'll save my comments on the section.
I appreciate that. It's that one's very much a work in progress. So, and I know there's some revisions that are needed. All right, why don't we talk about next steps? I think we can look at Northampton's and think about general, are we getting too specific in some areas? Ms. Souza, if you can do a little data collection on languages. And the other thing is if you could share, even though a lot of this I think is coming from school department, goals, and maybe share it with the superintendent and just make sure he's good with it. And I'll do the same with the safe communities, with the deputy chief and the chief, and get their feedback and, and try and reach a consensus with them. But if there's areas where we don't agree, then we can talk them through in our public meeting. And then I'll do a little more work on the economic development section as we talked about, but I can send that to our new planning director who I've found to be very interested and positive about ensuring that our economic development work is reaching all of our residents to get his thoughts and feedback. So we'll get some more sort of professional input on this and use that to guide us. And then get another draft together, the next draft for our next meeting. And, again, I think we talked about maybe trying to, the new year having a consensus draft that we all agree on and vote on. And so I think that goal is still in sight. And minutes, Ms. Malik, if you can, I'll send you video of the last one and I'll work on the other ones, and I'll try and, do tonight's as well. And if anybody else is itching to try writing minutes, please let me know. And then hopefully once the city council hires a new admin assistant, we can get their help. Because generally I don't like it when members write their own minutes. I just think, if your bias when you're talking about things you said is going to come through. So, but we vote on all the minutes. So if I'm misrepresent you, you know, we can adjust that as we always do. Any other comments?
I guess I'm just curious, like, if it's worth meeting in August. We have, I think, tried to sort of meet monthly, but I don't know if it's worth maybe polling members if they're going on vacation, as people have a tendency to do during the summer.
That's true.
Yeah,
and I do think it would be better if we had more folks here. So I will do that tomorrow. The date would be, you know, our usual second Tuesday of the month at the same time, which, if I can find my calendar here, would be August 9th at 6 p.m. But I will send out an email, and if a bunch of people say, oh yeah, I'm going to be away, then we could wait another month, and that would give us more time to do some individual legwork. All right. Seeing nothing else, we will call it a night. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Take care.